find something new.
In a way, it's a real high-stakes time for meetings. This was one of a handful of relevant observations around meeting, design, and facilitation culture that Eric made when Dan and I caught up about our work together with him and his team at Visa. Eric Berger is a learning and talent management executive with a passion for culture change and for building an organization's capacity to attract, develop, and deploy leaders who make a measurable impact. He has a number of specialties as well. As usual, our reflection conversation centered on these questions. When and how did we meet? And what have we worked on together? What were the whats that found their way in our work together? And what difference has that made for each of us? We hope you find listening in on this recent reflection conversation helpful for furthering your practice in working with groups. This will be our last one for a little bit as Dan and I, and hopefully you all, settle into your summer holidays. Thanks so much.
Also working today though, like you're on location.
I am on location. This is for the community conference that we're running in just 10 days called The Art of Oneness in Jersey City.
Okay.
So we're renting out a theater space and we are inviting 120 people. So here to talk to the crew on site just around a whole bunch of logistics.
Yeah, the detailed logistics.
Yeah.
Well, sort of like zooming out, right? One of the questions that we found has been sort of interesting. It's just like, when and how did we meet? Those connections over time. So what do you remember about that, Eric?
Well, I can't remember who introduced us, Mike, but I mean, I remember us being connected. I want to say it was through the Ombuds community, but it was somebody in the conflict resolution field.
It was Andrew Cohn.
Oh, it was Andrew. Okay.
Yeah. But how did you know him?
How did I know Andrew?
Yeah.
I knew Andrew because I interviewed Andrew for a job at Deloitte like 15 years ago.
Okay.
And we just really vibed.
Yeah.
We're interested in many of the same things.
Yeah.
And we stayed in touch all of these years.
Okay. Yeah, so similar. I met Andrew at my original Ombuds training it would have been 2009.
Oh, wow.
So maybe in a similar window, I guess, time frame wise. And we were sitting at the same table and we're role playing together and things like that. And then we just sort of stayed in touch over time. So at some point when I was catching up with him, I think he said, you need to talk to Eric. So we met over email, I guess.
How it happens in 2024.
Yeah.
2024 did we meet, or 2023? I can't remember, but anyway, wasn't later.
Yeah, I mean, it was pre-Visa, so whatever year that was. So it was a couple of years ago.
Couple of years, yeah.
Yeah. I think you were in it.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me.
Yeah. Wow.
And then I came into the picture, it must have been end of 23, right? I think I was when I first became aware of your name, Eric, and Mike was mentioning you. So, and then we must have coincided on a introductory video call somewhere along the line, end of 23 or start of 24, actually. I think, Mike, you were saying, oh, that's about the right time.
Yeah. Something had kind of occurred to you, or you had sort of transitioned. And then little by little, we sort of found our way. So when you think of what we've done together, like what have we done together, and kind of what has found its way? And is it even finding its way in what you're planning right now, what you're about to do later today?
I think about the work that we've done together as play. And I don't mean that in any pejorative way at all. I mean it as the highest compliment, because I think what our conversations have helped me to do is to really start thinking about the work that I do, the teams that I work with do, the organizations I work with do. Thinking about like how it is that we bring people together in ways that create meaning, that are engaging, and that get us to think a little bit differently about these tired spaces. So I feel like it's this big kind of refresh and renovation in how we meet, and how we discuss, and how we consult. and how we gather. So
Mm.
that's the inspiration that I've taken from our conversations up to this point.
I think one of the first things we talked about potentially working on together was an executive offsite. And I remember you'd come out of an experience where it just felt to you like there was so much missed opportunity and so much that you wanted to personally be different in that experience, or that's what you were hoping for. And that's what I remember thinking. That's the sign of like that those are whenever we meet people like that, we're like, those are our people. Because there's something personal to that person that like goes beyond like, do you know what, I can get away with just doing the usual on this, or I'm just happy with the usual. Like no one's going to get any special credit or like massive bonus or promotion from
Yeah,
doing a really, really, really good meeting. But I think it's what's needed here.
Mm.
I couldn't agree more. I actually think that um, in a way, it's a very high stakes time for meetings.
Mm.
Weird thing to say, but I think as we're coming into this age of Gen AI, where we're going to be increasingly relying on a co-pilot or a digital angel on my shoulder in order to get work done, to think about problem solving, the spaces where we actually come together as humans are going to become higher stakes. It's going to
Mm.
become more important work. And people are going to have less patience for it too,
Mm.
because the hard and deep work that we need to do in sort of problem solving, generating ideas, AI can help us do that a lot faster. So I feel like we've got to start thinking about meetings as being catalysts, but also as being spaces for connection and for building the human or the interhuman organisms that actually help us to make change.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, so much of meeting design, so much of what we do right now, it's kind of like walking, right? You don't really think about it because you're just putting one foot in front of another, and we've all grown up having meetings
Mhm.
of different sorts, right? Be
Right.
it in our personal life or in our professional life. And so it's only now when I think that space is becoming even more maybe rarefied and more
Mhm.
important that we're finding the need to be more deliberate and thoughtful around what we're
Mhm.
actually doing around those meetings, which is where you guys come in.
Yeah. Well, and there's that element, I think what was coming to mind with some of the pieces you were sharing, Eric, and also you, Dan, this part of reflecting.
Mhm.
Um, like that's sort of a human experience, right? We could work with AI to reflect on, well, what are all the things we said, and can you summarize it for us and organize it for us and even propose plans? But the idea of what do we think about what we're seeing, right, or where we've been, that's much more of a human experience as opposed to it's a different depth of knowledge or awareness, even. And so maybe that's part of what's coming to mind for me from what you said about what is important about meeting now and that use of bringing people together.
I think about it, what your comments provoking for me, Mike, is I think about in really all of my work in groups, be it professionally in the community, even in my family. I like to think about everything existing in this sort of iterative cycle
Mm.
where we come together to consult, and hopefully that consultation means that we're surfacing a lot of really diverse and divergent perspectives.
Mhm.
We're meshing all that together. We're kind of using that spark of difference to help us then take forward some kind of idea, something new that we're actually taking to action, and hopefully we're doing that reasonably quickly.
Mhm.
And so it's the consultation piece, the action piece, and then the reflection
Mhm.
back quickly after that action and asking, well, how'd that go? What did we learn from that experience? And
Mhm.
how might we want to incorporate that into our next round of consultations and our
Mhm.
next round of action? Just keep going around in that circle,
Yeah. Yeah.
which sounds easy in practice. Like it's, no, I don't think anybody's going to disagree with what I just said.
Mhm.
But how many people actually do it on a regular
Right.
basis?
Yeah.
And how hard is it for us sometimes to just find the spaces to do it?
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, and sort of the intention to do it, right? Just the act to say, actually, we're going to do that this time and see where we go to iterate through it. I guess when I think of it, and Dan, you might have a question too, because I see your that curiosity
No,
peak there.
I've just got
Um, the
thinking face.
the how did that show up? Like in the work that we literally did, do you see that thread? Were we iterating? Were we doing something different in that with you when we were playing?
Absolutely. So I think one of the real pieces of value that I found in the work that we were doing together is even within the planning stage itself, for us to come up, generate some ideas, go out and test those ideas, maybe with others, maybe to let them kind of percolate and marinate a little bit, and then come back and reflect on, okay, since our last conversation, what are some of the things that have emerged? What are some of the things that we've learned? What can we do to apply those learnings? And then just be part of that continuous cycle of refinement. So one of the things I appreciated, for example, around the work that we were doing when we were standing up the Global Learning Advisory Council at Visa, was the opportunity to not just make this a kind of one and done exercise. Okay, we're going to sit together, we're going to have one conversation, we're going to come up with a brilliant design. Eric, you're going to go and execute it, and then we're all done.
Mhm.
It was actually making that part of an iterative process of learning and discovering together.
Mhm. Yeah, so it definitely applied. And were there things that kind of came to light about how you might have typically led those things or different, opportunities for growth or knowledge of the team members you were doing that with? Was that a part
Well,
of that process?
I think one of the things that I really enjoyed about the process was the opportunity to get multiple voices in the mix as we were planning
Mhm.
those meetings. So it wasn't just, me and a couple of trusted members of my team or one other person, or even just giving it to somebody else. Great, let's go plan this meeting. It was thinking, really, really thinking hard about what do we want from those conversations? What do the people who are going to be attending want from those conversations? Like, where does that all then lead us in terms of content, in terms of the who, in terms of the what we're talking about,
Mhm.
in terms of the way we're structuring the sort of how of the conversations?
Mhm.
So I just I felt it was an unusually rigorous process.
Mhm.
I was wondering what you'd noticed in the people around you in the team as we were working together. Is there anything that stood out to you, like with your colleagues? Like you're like, oh, that seems different this time. Just in the way that you were working together, maybe not the outcome of the council kind of series meeting, not the outcome of the event itself, but like just how did it feel different or seem observably different to you to work in the way that we were wanting to work?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that come to mind, right? One is just in general, I feel like it provoked more curiosity. So rather than thinking about the end at the start, we thought about the process of getting there. And it was almost, and it's kind of a meta comment, but it was like the, the meetings to get to the meeting are actually going to help us to shape the outcome here. And there's real value in us coming together in that way. So I think part of it was just getting people to think to kind of approach this with more curiosity and less as another task. Um, I think the other we sort of went through the book of prompts and used that as the basis for our conversations. It created this it created a kind of conversation amongst us, amongst those of us who were planning, that was more inclusive.
Mm.
So it wasn't just, hey, Eric, you're the boss. What do you want from this? What do you want to have happen? And then somebody else's job is to go out and execute on that ask.
Mhm.
Instead, it kind of leveled the playing field, which is, I think, very important, especially in corporate structures, when a lot of the time people are just going out and trying to like gather one person's perspective who's supposed to be the authoritative person.
Hmm.
And that drives me nuts because I'm like, I'm not smarter. I'm actually less smart than the people I work with.
Hmm.
My job is to be the orchestra conductor as a
Hmm.
leader. And that means that, I'm never going to play the instruments as well as anybody, but hopefully I'm there to be able to listen really well to those instruments so that I can get them the right balance. And
Hmm.
you guys gave me the right platform to have some of those really important conversations.
The depth of that and just kind of the multiple dimensions of just the relationships in your team, even your own relationship to the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you were actually delivering and in those meetings, like what did you hear from people that attended? Did you hear some of the feedback that you had originally in that executive offsite of like, what am I doing here? Right? Did you notice any changes in the relationships? Did you hear anything directly about what their experience was and compared to other, groups you had brought together for kind of similar purposes?
I think people felt really valued. They felt like I think it's like two things, valued and connected. So I think a lot of these meetings tend to be very much one-way projections of information or conveyance of an idea or action, where instead the way that we kicked it all off with your help was much more about the why people are there. So, getting people engaged so that
Mhm.
they saw the sort of what's in it for me. Why should I want to be part of this conversation? Why does it matter? And then the connectivity between our participants themselves, like even thinking about I'm trying to remember what we called the bio book we put together for that group for GLAC.
Mhm.
Um, uh, Anyways, but the sort of profiles and
Yeah.
the questions that we asked and the opportunity for people to actually deepen relationships and get to know one another. Of course, that's
Mhm.
often something that people see as being of value when they come together, and yet that's something that we often don't make the time for.
Mhm.
That's kind of like relegated off. Oh, you got breaks, right? There you can actually talk to other people, or
Mhm.
here's where you
Mm.
can really get to know others. So
Mhm.
I felt like that was just helpful for us to be more deliberate about
Mhm.
how we were helping people connect laterally, not just like from
Hmm.
me and the team to our participants.
Mhm. And then as you kind of zoom out just on, what as you kind of carry forward and look ahead and what's next for you and we're doing things like what has working together meant to you? Like what do you carry with you? What have you taken from our working relationship and just kind of into what's next?
Well, I've had fun. So I think I've always enjoyed our conversations, and I think it's because I've always come out of them feeling like there's a new and different way of thinking about a problem that I had been stirring on for some
Mhm.
time. And so, I think the way that you guys create spaces that allow me and the people who are on my team in the meetings to step back and um, do that reflection,
Mhm.
but also start to introduce new and different questions.
Mhm.
I've just found that tremendously helpful. So that's stuff that I'm sort of taking with me as I'm going and planning meetings, even just like the one I'm planning right now for May 17th, right, around a different set of questions that
Yeah.
I want to be asking.
Yeah, I know for me, something that's from our working together that I always kind of carry forward is as a leader, right? And we're consultants, right? And coaches in that way. And there's an inherent power dynamic, right? And also an inherent kind of peer co-creator
Yeah.
element and dynamic to that too. But something that is so appreciated and was a wonderful reminder throughout was the way you would proactively communicate around a
Mm.
change or a planning or a scheduling element. You were always just so conscientious around our time, the team's collective time, like what an impact of a change in where your focus might mean and how to adjust with that. Like it was just, you were right there. It was never like chasing you. It was you were embodying, valuing the time and the connectedness in those you work with, and just respecting that. And it was just a wonderful experience and just a good reminder of how to do that, right? In any
Mm.
process. And so that definitely sticks with me for sure.
Yeah, you
Glad to
stole
hear that.
my reflection actually, Mike. But I mean, I'd say in extension to that, really, it was really gratifying working with you, Eric, because of there wasn't such a big gap as there sometimes is. I guess especially with people who are in a corporate environment where there's like if it's a low intentionality environment and there's lots of like just action, 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 but not much intention. You close the gap with us because we come in with high intentionality and you sort of you come to up to meet us.
Mhm.
Whereas with many clients, sometimes we find that we're stretching to come to find them and like go, we thought we said this last time. Like this is happening now. Like
Mhm.
let's try and stitch these moments in time together so that it makes sense and it's coherent as we come
Yeah.
together. And as
Mhm.
you know, like it's not, yes, we have, like, let's say it takes 6 meetings to get ready for a big executive council, right? It's not just the 6 meetings, it's the moments between the meetings and the okay, who was there, who wasn't here? How are we going to share asynchronously what we've done? How are we
Mhm.
going to wrap that in just the right amount of information so people can consume it? And if there's
Mhm.
a decision to make, how can we actually make sure that that's efficiently delivered and consumable and actable? So
Yeah.
it's just you played that game with us. So it was great.
Well, yeah, I think one of the reasons why I felt compelled to do that is because I mean, the way that you guys are operating is you're bringing a lot of humility to this. So you clearly know what you're doing, but you're also transparent that you're learning along the way as well
Mhm.
around what works and doesn't work. And so I feel like, look, I'm a learning guy, right? That's what I do. And so I always appreciate people who bring this mindset of kind of learning and curiosity and co-discovery to any venture. It, makes me want to be a participant and a partner and not just a client.
That kind of that virtuous cycle of that, right? It kind of keeps giving, iterating, emerging. Um, all the buzzwords that I just landed. Yeah. So what else? Is there any questions for us? Like what questions do you have for us or thoughts or anything that we haven't covered yet?
Well, I want to come back to a place where I started at the very beginning, which was just around the whole Gen AI piece. I
Mm.
mean, it's having such a profound impact on really every mode of work. And I I wonder what your reflections are on what does it mean? What does Gen AI mean for your work? How do you see deploying it as part of your work? And what do you think it means for meetings and gatherings and the way people come together going forward? What do you think might change? What needs might be there that haven't been there in the past to the same degree?
Hmm. That's a big question. And I don't even know that we've spent a lot of time like really digging into it. I suppose what's coming to mind for me are a couple things. Like one, we're working on another iteration of the book of prompts. And the book of prompts, right? It shares prompts, which is ubiquitous with generative AI. And
Good point.
when we chose prompts, that was a few years ago before it was ubiquitously generative AI.
Right.
And our prompts are self-reflective, right? Getting
Yeah.
to another theme we talked about too. So
Yeah.
you can't necessarily ask. You could ask, hey, what activities could I do for a group of people? And you get something spit back. But
Yeah.
you couldn't necessarily ask, based on my knowledge of these people and this particular nuance and my sense of things, what activities might I choose and how do I see that working with
Yeah.
that group in this space in this way specifically?
Yeah.
So so I think it fits in the sense of it might prime people to use it to help give them a bunch more knowledge so that when they self-reflect, they have more to put together.
Yeah.
So maybe it refines some of the self-reflection.
Yeah.
Maybe it could bog it down, right? Some people just want to write it down and then go research, right? What they've kind of put out there. In our
Huh.
work, the only place that we've really explored it is when you're creating a lot of knowledge and themes, can it help organize things a little bit more quickly to
Huh.
reflect that we have enough to move forward? right? Are
Yeah.
we good
Yeah.
enough with what we just created together using our own collective reflection and knowledge creation that it
Yeah.
summarized
Mm,
it for us and we're looking at it? Those next five things look good to do. Or the five ways we feel about this, that's good enough. We don't need to keep talking
mm,
about it. Like we have a good summary. Let's move on. So we've explored ways to help shorten some of that cycle of understanding and alignment.
mm,
But yeah, so those are the two big things, like the ubiquitous of prompts and how does that interplay, and then some of the content validation and direction, maybe.
mm.
Well, it's interesting you
Yeah.
mentioned that about prompts. I actually thought you were going to say something different. I thought you were going to say, hey, we could use your prompts as prompts from a Gen AI perspective. Because one of the things that I've noticed in my own experience using Gen AI is that it really is like having a conversation with a human being.
Can
And
be.
the more that you treat it like a human being, actually, the better responses you get.
Hmm.
And so much of it is about asking the right question and
Hmm.
putting in the right prompt. It's very when you look at the research on this, actually, there's some early research that's dated already. It's like a year old, but I remember there's some early research comparing how people from different professions do at utilizing Gen AI.
Hmm.
And actually, among the worst are the people who actually are developing Gen AI, the developers themselves. Why? Because they think very linearly and they tend to ask very linear questions
Hmm.
versus, teachers, for example, were among the best. Why? Because teachers ask the kinds of questions that are meant to elicit thought from and provoke thinking in
Hmm.
students.
Hmm.
And that's what you want. You want to provoke the Gen AI to think in a new and different way.
Yeah.
So that'd be interesting to play with as you guys are forward too. Like even as I've been working on this conference, I've been using both Chat GPT and Gemini and just
Hmm.
comparing which are good at what kind of
Hmm.
exercise. I find
Yeah.
Gemini is really good at data manipulation and at analyzing data. And Chat GPT is much better at kind of thinking creatively and putting together narratives and that kind of stuff. So
Hmm.
all kinds of neat experiments you can do.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it is kind of, yeah, how can it be a companion in the work, right?
Yeah,
And help kind of support the framing in our parlance, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Definitely worth kind of considering. And I mean that sounds like a future conversation for us and something to keep tabs on. Um, as we do what's next and what might emerge there from the two of you at all.
No, just a pleasure to connect, Eric, and reflect. I don't think we'd really had such a long debrief, really, on the whole time that we've
Mm,
known each other so far in the last year. So,
Hmm.
thank you for taking the time.
of
It's been a great
course.
half hour.
Yeah. Actually, I did
But
think of one last question if you have a minute.
yeah.
This will be fun, right? I'm gonna reopen the question. So of the conversation, as we like in any of the experiences that we've had together over the multitude of conversations. Um, I might be a little
Mm.
frozen here. I think I'm back. The Were there any moments where you were like, "What are you doing? I'm not following you. This, I don't want to do this." Like, were there any, can you put your finger on like wrong turns or warning signs or danger areas or beyond comfort zone experiments that were a bridge too
Mm,
far? Yeah.
Not really. I mean, yeah, I'm always game for this kind of stuff. I think when I meet people like the two of you whose thinking and intentions jive so closely with mine, my natural instinct is just to assume that if I don't get something, it's because I'm not getting it, not because you're not making sense. There's nothing like that that jumps out at me. Maybe if you asked me like right after a meeting, I would have thought of something like that.
Right.
But no, nothing moves to me.
That's
Okay,
cool. That's
good
cool.
to know.
It's always good that we just found that that's always kind of good too, right? What are we blind
Yeah,
to,
Mm,
right?
yeah,
What do we
good
not know in
question
the process of working? Yeah.
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. And you're a deep thinker, a reflective sort, for sure.
That's right.
We all do,
Okay.
right? Awesome. Well, hey, good luck planning this conversation and keep us posted on how it goes
Thank you.
and
It'll be
any
fun.
creative things that come out of it.
Yeah, we'll see. We're going to experiment with a whole bunch of stuff. So I'll let you know.
Awesome. It's one of the experiments you're most excited about, out of curiosity.
Um, we are so the session, the whole program, it's 12 hours. It's called The Art of Oneness.
Hmm.
So what we're trying to do is bring the arts into this conversation around how does oneness show up? How do we foster and cultivate unity at work,
Hmm.
in our personal lives, with our families, in our communities, even in the
Hmm.
world as a whole?
Hmm.
And so what we're doing is actually the the we're calling it arts festival we're going to have in the evening is after people reflect on a day of various panels and discussions around those topics, we're going to invite people to create something that speaks to this idea of oneness. So we've got 5 groups.
Hmm.
They're going to have an hour to create the visual art slash sculpture. It's actually I'm some creating poetry, music, theater. What am I forgetting? Well, maybe it is just those 4.
Hmm.
So the idea is how can the arts actually help us to better digest this idea of unity and express it in a way that just inspires the people around us and
Yeah.
is inspiring to ourselves. So
Yeah.
the that's a little bit of an experiment. I've found that as I work with particularly young people,
Hmm.
like when they can get their hands on something and there's music involved or there's art involved or there's poetry involved or there's something theatrical involved, that it just like gets them engaged at a whole other level.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's
Cool.
kind of, and we're trying to incorporate arts in different ways into almost all the sessions that we're actually running.
Okay.
Even if it's just getting people to sketch something down on a piece of paper as they're reflecting on a conversation or a panel that we've just heard.
Hmm. Super
We'll
cool.
see.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Well, good luck with the ongoing design and planning. And
thank you.
yeah, we look forward to hearing how it goes. And thanks for making the
Awesome.
time today.
Nice to see you both.
Nice to see you too. All right.
Thanks,
Ciao.
Eric. Good luck. See you
Bye.
soon.
Bye.
Yeah, bye.